Welcome to Smart Women Talk. This is your host, Katana Abbott. I'm a midlife millionaire coach and a certified financial planner, and I search the world for smart women and a few good men, including best-selling authors and thought leaders who are on that leading edge. So join us for conversations on money, business, health, and inspiration, so you can live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. She's the author of 4 bestsellers, best-selling books, including her Fearless Living, which is how I found out about her. And she is the founder of the Fearless Living Institute. She's been named America's favorite life coach, and she brings neuroscience into the picture. And she helps you get over this idea of not being good enough, which is huge. And I'm sure when I say that, everyone gets little chills or goosebumps thinking about it. We all have this fear. And so I'm thrilled that you came here to talk to us about it today.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm glad to be here. And fear is at the heart. We can call it procrastination. I always like to say so many people don't even know that they have fear. I know I was one of those people. If you would have told me before Fearless Living that I had fear, I'd be like, no, I don't. I grew up in Upper Michigan, Upper Minnesota. We didn't feel. So having fear, what are you, crazy? It was only when I started recognizing that all of the things that we do that we think are our problems, the procrastination, the overwhelm, the anxiety, the worry, the guilt, the blame, the shame, the beating ourselves up, all of those things are truly just a function and a response to a deeper fear. So we wouldn't procrastinate if we didn't have a fear. We wouldn't get overwhelmed if we didn't have a fear, right? We wouldn't get anxious, and we wouldn't get overwhelmed. We wouldn't feel bad about ourselves. We wouldn't beat ourselves up. We wouldn't run from failure or run from success. When I really got that fear is at the heart of all of the things that we think are our problems, it made life a lot simpler.
So you're saying fear is at the heart of most of our problems, or all of them?
I would say, I'm not going to say that fear is at the heart of an illness necessarily, but when you're sitting here, when people are beating themselves up, right? So yes, we could go into that as well, correct?
I know.
We could do the body-mind connection, right? But think about all the things that people normally beat themselves up about. And in fact, I'll give a little quiz right now. So if the folks that are listening to us right now want to shut their eyes, I'll give them a little quiz because, again, just like myself, when I heard Fearless Living, I was like, yeah, Fearless Living is awesome. But when I remember, are you afraid? And I would always answer no, because I didn't understand how it was showing up in my life. I didn't see my problems in my life related to fear. It didn't even occur to me because I didn't feel afraid, right? And I didn't use the words I'm scared or I'm afraid. I didn't use that language. Mm-hmm. So I didn't understand. I didn't really identify with it. So that's like the irony that I now talk about fear all day long. But I'd love to give a little quiz to help people that are listening right now determine how their fear may be showing up for them, to see if this conversation helps them relate, it supports them. So everybody who's listening, go ahead, and if you're listening right now, go ahead and shut your eyes. And I'm going to read a list of words. And as I read this list of words, I want you to nod your head if you do any of these things or feel any of these things. So I want you to nod your head all the way down to your chest if you do any of these things or feel any of these things. Okay, everybody ready? Okay, be truthful, don't lie. Okay, do you ever isolate yourself? Do you ever pretend everything's okay when it's not? Do you ever hide out? Do you ever whine? How about settle? Compare? What about manipulate secretly? Do you ever get defensive? Judge? Do you ever complain? Procrastinate? Worry? Do you ever wait and call it patience? Do you ever blame? Struggle? Feel like you got to control things? Do you ever feel bitter? What about powerless? What about resentful? A little entitlement? Ever feel guilty? Disappointed? Do you ever feel irritated like now? Do you ever feel overwhelmed? Ignored? Ever feel self-pity? What about annoyed? Go ahead and open your eyes. And yes, Katana, what are you thinking about that?
I think I know men have fears too, but with women, it's so much more prevalent. And I was nodding. Yes, and one of the huge ones is judgment. Judgment, it really does stem from fear because the mind is a mirror. And what you don't like and then could be something that you're afraid of, right, in yourself.
That's right. So most people, when I give this list out, I don't care if I'm talking to an audience of 1,000 people or talking to a group of 20 in corporate America, it doesn't matter. On average, most people have anywhere between 80 to 100%. They nod their head. Yep. I very rarely, if any, ever get below 80%.
Yeah.
These are the things that we beat ourselves up about. Oh God, I wish, like you said, I wish I wasn't so judgmental. I wish I was a horrible person for thinking that. And we beat ourselves up and put ourselves down for these things that we think we have 10 problems. I procrastinate, I judge, I compare, I'm competitive, right? We list all these problems. And then we think to ourselves, I'm going to work on my procrastination. Then I'm going to work on my judgment. Then I'm going to work on my overwhelm. And then I'm going to work on my anxiety, right? And we think they're separate issues, when in fact they all stem from what I call the wheel of fear. They all stem from that core fear that each of us has that's individualized and personalized. Like your core fear is going to be different than mine. So everybody has a core fear based on their personal experience, based on their history, based on how they grew up. And also research is now showing that fears actually come through our DNA. So you may not have even had any experience that you can point to. Because people always say, like, why am I like this? There may not be a why in this lifetime. So it might have been handed down from your great-grandfather. So spending a lot of time on why am I like this? Why am I like this? And trying to figure out the magical story, figure out the magical moment that then everything would be open and available. I think we're all old enough to know that you find one why, there's just another why behind it. So what I've discovered is that there's this fear that is really underlying, and it's like a plant. We have a root, which is fear, and then we have the different flowers popping up: procrastination, overwhelm, anxiety, etc., manipulation, control. And as we get better, we go to procrastination school and go, I'm not going to procrastinate anymore. And then we go through the class and we're done. We don't do it anymore. We're amazing. We're so proud of ourselves. Fear doesn't care. Fear doesn't care if it's procrastination or overwhelm or judgment. It doesn't care what you do. It just wants to keep you safe. So it'll just pop up a new flower. It'll just pop up a new problem. I'm sure everybody can relate to the fact that you work so hard on figuring out something, solving something. You think, I got it, I mastered it, I'm done. And then it pops up 3 years later.
Mm-hmm. So what about people who say, I'm not afraid of anything? Is that true? Or do they really believe it? Or are they just in denial?
That's what I thought. That's what I thought most of my life. I thought I wasn't afraid of anything. Mm-hmm. And yes, I would say that they're in denial. Okay. And they've been able to live their life this way. But the challenge is when I had a guy, actually, when I first wrote Fearless Living, I was on my book tour and I was in Atlanta, Georgia. And this guy walks into my book signing and he's like, hi. And I'm like, hello. And he's like, I came here to tell you I'm already fearless. I'm like, yay, good for you. Getting in your car, driving over here to tell me that, right? And so I said, well, do you mind if I give you a little quiz? And he's like, go ahead. I'm like, great. This guy was like 6'2", 220, big guy, just like, I'm not afraid of anything. I'm like, okay, great. So awesome. Are you able to say I love you first? Do you have any resentments of past relationships? Have you forgiven your enemies? And I went down this list of emotional risks. And what I find is that people who brag and believe that they don't have any fear are talking about the fear of jumping off a plane or the fear of opening a business or the fear of practical things. But really, when you start talking to them about the emotional risks that people have to take in order to give love and feel love, in order to have peace, etc., they usually, that's when they go, oh crap, okay. And then that's where their fear shows up. So most people think of fear as jumping out of an airplane. Fear is actually jumping into life, right? Moving from any area of your life where you're surviving, moving into thriving. That takes courage. That takes vulnerability. That takes humility. That takes a willingness to be wrong about everything. And all of that helps us and supports us in facing our fears. But many of us don't even know, like you said just a minute ago, they don't even tie it to fear. they just think it's a character flaw in themselves, right? They think there's something wrong with them. I'm just not like that. I can't do that. That's not me, right? I don't know if I could ever do that, right? They blame themselves. They think it's a character flaw, and they don't understand that it's just fear whispering in their ear, telling them that that's not a good idea, because then you're going to have to grow, expand, and I can't keep you safe.
So wonderful that you're doing this work, and there are so many powerful women like you doing this work out in the world. And it seems to be, tell me if you know, there seems to be a real shift happening on the planet, like majorly, a major happening here. And how does that relate to the work you're doing?
I think that the world is getting more awake, right? I mean, getting more conscious. They're realizing that how they've seen things, and how things have worked in the past doesn't work anymore. For instance, just expand your mind, expand your heart without confronting the things that have been your past beliefs, or the things that have been, that you thought before, right? Your thoughts, your beliefs, etc. It's a time of, I don't want to say the word confrontation, but for the lack of a better word, confrontation, which in fearless living language is, if you feel like confronting, it's really a craving for connection. So we're all just trying to find a way to connect, and we're coming from very different, quote unquote, human realities. And can we find the thread of truth for all of us? And can we build on that thread of truth? So I think this is an amazing time. I sometimes spend hours thinking about how can we make an even bigger impact? How can we shift it faster? How can we wake people up even more, right? And it's an incredible time to be alive.
It really is. And I work with women in midlife, and they're all looking for their purpose and how do I do something in my second act and all that. But then I see the young people, and I am in awe of the young people. These millennials, they're 25, 35 years old. They're amazing. My daughters are millennials, and they are quick. And sometimes I listen to a young gal on a podcast with another millennial. I didn't even know what they were talking about. And then I went into fear, and I thought I wanted to interview her, but I actually felt insecure, like the fear thing came up, instead of going, wow, let's do it and go for it, because she talks so fast and she seemed fearless. Okay, Rhonda, that's where I'm getting with this. She just seemed so fearless, like nothing fazed her. And she even said she took this job and she didn't even know how to do it, but she figured she could figure it out on the internet when she got the job.
Yeah. Think about the younger people. They have things that we never had, right? We didn't have the internet. We didn't have cell phones. They have so much more available to them. And that comes up with another issue, which is there's an incredible experience of loneliness among the millennials and the younger folks who are attached to their phone. There's an epidemic of loneliness, an epidemic of disconnection, even though they're connected. Every growth opportunity has that quote unquote shadow side, has the, okay, wait a minute, I've got to be able to explore this fully and completely, rather than just take a little bit of it, go with it. And then you and I both know that eventually the shadow catches up with you. Eventually that fear side catches up with you, because it has to be addressed, or that part's going to keep you in that box, right? We all live in a box that we have created, i.e. or been created for us, and we stepped in and we're still in it. And in order to step out of that box, it takes, like I said, a huge vulnerability, a huge willingness to be willing to be wrong about everything. If you're not willing to be wrong about everything, then you're not really willing to see the truth. If you're attached to something being a certain way, then you can't see the truth, because you'll always filter the world and what you hear and through what you're willing to accept. So are you willing to be wrong?
Take that first step? Because one of the things I run into is people not feeling good enough, but being afraid to shine their light. And this idea of vulnerability and getting out there and being authentic. And they're so afraid that they never get to really shine. What does that do? And what do you suggest for someone? How do they get past that?
Yeah, first of all, people always ask me, well, Rhonda, what's my wheel of fear? What's my wheel of fear? And people will say to me, oh, I know mine. It's not good enough. Not good enough is the generic version of the wheel of fear. So all of us generically, if we just had peanut butter rather than Jifs, or tissue instead of Kleenex, it's just the generic. It's just, I'm not good enough. Again, I know how it feels. It feels raw. It feels really true. I hear you. And there's actually a personalized version, an individualized version of not good enough that is more unique, more stab in the throat, more stab in the heart than not good enough. So first of all, just to start separating yourself from not good enough, that not good enough is something that is there really, truly to keep you safe. Now, I want to talk a little bit about the brain. The brain is where our neurobiology, fear lives within us, right? Fear is part and parcel of who we are. You can't get rid of it. So when people say, I have no fear, I say, okay, did you have a lobotomy? Because that's pretty much the only way you're going to get rid of fear. So we want to think about how the brain works. What does the brain do? The brain, let's just think of, we have energy. We have a certain level of energy every day. And let's call it 100 units of energy. Okay, let's just say that. 100 units of energy every day. And if we are on automatic pilot, which by the way, our brain is trained to be on automatic pilot, so it conserves energy. So that's why we judge, by the way. We judge because that is how the brain is wired, so it doesn't use energy. It is a technique. It is how we're wired to basically go, oh, that person there. So I don't have to think about it. I don't have to get to know each person. I don't have to discover each person. I don't have to figure out each person. I can just lump them in boxes, and it saves me energy. It saves me energy. So we only have 100 units of energy, let's say, a day. And every time we make a decision, that takes energy. Anytime we try something new, we need more energy. Okay. So how the brain works is it goes, I need to conserve energy. I need to conserve energy at all costs because I got to keep Rhonda alive. I got to keep Katana alive, right? I got to keep them alive. So I've got to conserve this energy. So just judging is again a conservation tool. And the other thing the brain does is a problem in the present. So I have a problem right now, today, in the present. The brain is wired to look in the past for a template. Look in the past for a template to apply to the present moment. And this is why we keep repeating past experiences, because literally our brain is wired to go into the past to get a template to apply to the present problem to create a different future. And you and I are smart enough to know that doesn't work. But that's how the brain is wired. Yeah. Okay.
That makes sense.
Right? So if we know that the brain is wired that way, and the brain is wired to conserve our energy, and the brain is wired to keep us safe. And oh, by the way, the brain doesn't know the difference between our imagination and reality, doesn't know the difference. That's why law of attraction, it works. In some cases, it doesn't, right? The law of attraction is a technique, but it has faults, right? So the law of attraction is something we imagine and something that's real. Mm-hmm. So if you walk into a party and say, these people aren't my people, the brain goes, oh, I guess these people aren't my people. I guess the people are my people. So it actually acts on that, believing that's true. So the brain doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality. The brain looks in the past for a solution because that's its template. And the other thing that the brain does, and this is how fear works, is it wants you to keep repeating the past because it knows if you repeat the past, it can keep you alive. It doesn't know if you make a new decision, and try something new, the brain, i.e., ignites fear and goes, she's about to do something that we have no idea if it's going to work. And we don't know if she's going to stay alive emotionally, physically, etc. So we've got to shut her down. We've got to make her have doubt. We've got to make her worry. We've got to make her feel anxious because she has got to stay in line because we've got to keep her safe. Actually equals your ability to live in the unknown. If you have to know, that is not freedom. Because you're able to live in the unknown and not know what's going to happen and be able to walk in there vulnerably, courageously, fearlessly, and start using your energy differently is when true change happens.
But that's so easy to say, but very scary to do.
It's very scary to do, but that's exactly why I created the wheels, Katana. This is exactly the reason, because once you understand, for me personally, and my students and my clients, once you understand how the wheel of fear works, just like the wheel
of fear, because everyone here is newbie unless they've been through it.
Okay, sure. Yeah, absolutely. So the wheel of fear, just to give you a brief, because there's the wheel of fear and the wheel of freedom. The wheel of fear has 4 components. And the first component is your trigger, what triggers you. And that trigger is what we call the core fear. It moves you into fear responses, right? It's fear responses, procrastination, overwhelm, all the things that you do that you hate about yourself, that you wish you didn't do, the procrastination, the overwhelm, etc. Oh, the self-doubt, the negative self-talk, the beating yourself up, the judging, all of those are simply fear responses. They're just fear responses. That's all they are. And then if you continue to do those fear responses, if you continue to judge, beat yourself up, etc., you will eventually hit the number 3rd, which is the core negative feeling. And that's why we've all experienced the core negative feeling. My core negative feeling is worthless. So if I try my best and do everything I think is right, I will end up eventually someday lying in bed just asking myself, God, I'm so worthless, like feeling that dreaded feeling of worthlessness. And that's one of the things, we don't want to feel our core feeling. We don't want to feel worthless. We don't want to feel unlovable, right? We don't want to feel that. So we do those fear responses to stop that as well. And so then when we get to that core negative, and I'll show you a picture, hold a second, for those of us who are watching.
Rhonda, which book are you reading right now?
Oh, Fearless Living. Fearless Living.
Because I saw Rhonda Britten, your picture there. Oh, because that is such a great book.
Yeah, thank you. So it goes from the trigger. Let me see if I can do this here. It goes from the trigger, right? Trigger to fear responses to the core negative feeling, and it's self-destructive. So what's self-destructive? Self-destructive is, one of my coaches said that eating a dessert, a little treat, is 2 cookies. A fear response is 6 cookies. And when you're self-destructive, you're eating the whole bag.
Okay.
So self-destructive might be sleeping too much, sleeping too little, exercising too much, drinking, getting drunk, suicidal, etc., all those things. And then when we're self-destructive, we go, oh my God, my life sucks. I've got to try harder. And then we get back on the wheel. We get back on the wheel, right? We get back on the wheel of fear, right?
Yes.
So we want to, once you understand how the wheel works and how it works, more importantly, for you personally, because again, you're going to have your own trigger, your core negative and your own trigger. Once you see it plain as day, just like the Course in Miracles, plain as day, fear or love, you see this plain as day, you start recognizing, oh, this isn't me. This isn't who I am at my core. This isn't my essential nature. This isn't who I am. This is a mechanism that is created to keep me safe. Oh, it has nothing to do with me. That is not who I am. So once you start seeing that, what happens, what's really cool to Katana is when people discover their wheel, the first thing they usually out of their mouth comes, now I know why I did everything in my life. I know why I got married, divorced, went to school, quit school, get all their decisions. Yeah. They see it they see how it was a fear response. They see how it was a response to their fear. They see it. And then we introduce them to their wheel of freedom, which is, of course, the antidote to the wheel of fear. And once you see them as just the way your neurobiology is wired, it's not personal. I know it feels personal, but it's not personal. Then you can get that space between you and it to give yourself permission to make different choices, because now you know what's going on. It's not a secret anymore. It's not like, what's wrong with me? It's not a personal, you feeling like what's wrong with me. You're taking fear personally, and it is not personal.
Wow. Yeah, that's pretty powerful. So you can look at it without all the emotion and the self-judgment around it, because I think that's the big part. We're the biggest critic of ourselves.
Yes, but I would even say, because yes, and I would say the wheel of fear is the biggest critic of ourselves, right? You in your true nature, right? You in your true nature. Think about when you were born. Think of you and yourself in your true nature. If you were your truth, if you lived your essential nature, if you were living from that place, would you choose to beat yourself up? No, of course not. So when we're beating ourselves up, it's just a fear response. It's not you beating you up, even though I know it feels that way.
Oh my gosh, that's really great. Thank you for being here. And everyone, thanks for coming to Smart Women Talk. And until next time, go out and live with more purpose, passion, and prosperity. Smart Women Talk is brought to you by Smart Women's Empowerment, a 501c3 nonprofit project of United Charitable. Music by Bill Lucas from his album When It Rains. Available on Apple Music and Spotify. Catch us wherever you listen to your favorite podcast, and be sure to join our free community at joinsmartwomen.com to access all our free Smart Women resources.